Welcome back to the channel. Make sure to hit subscribe if you haven't already. Today, we're looking at one of the most extreme modern survival stories on record. The Amazon rainforest covers over 2 million square miles. It's a vast green ocean of dense vegetation and winding rivers that routinely swallows crashed aircraft whole, leaving no trace behind. Flying a small single-engine Cessna over this terrain was a standard part of life for Antonio Sena. He was an experienced pilot, flying a routine cargo route across the deep Brazilian interior. But at 3,000 feet, his engine failed. With no clearings in sight, Antonio had seconds to react, forcing the aircraft into a violent, controlled descent directly into the tops of the mahogany trees. He crawled from the shattered cockpit, covered in diesel fuel. When he took stock of his situation, the reality set in. He had a few water bottles, a little bread, no survival gear, and zero way to communicate with the outside world. 1 minute, you're commanding a piece of modern machinery. The next, you are entirely isolated in an environment actively hostile to human life, where your statistical probability of rescue rounds down to near zero. Aviation survival relies on one strict rule: stay with the plane. A downed aircraft is a massive piece of metal that search and rescue teams are specifically trained to look for. For an entire week, Antonio did exactly that. He sat near the wreckage and listened as rescue helicopters flew directly overhead. But the Amazon canopy is over 100 feet thick. Those overlapping leaves created an impenetrable shield, rendering search teams blind to his location. Every passing day near the wreckage consumed his tiny supply of calories and water. The math was brutally simple. He was burning energy waiting for a rescue that couldn't see him. By day 8, his rations were gone. He realized that if he continued to wait by the twisted metal of his Cessna, he would quietly starve to death right there. He gathered whatever small items he could carry and began to walk. He had no compass and couldn't see the sun through the trees, so he tracked the slight inclines of the terrain, hoping to find a water source that might lead to a river and eventually to people. Abandoning the crash site violates everything pilots are taught, yet in an environment that hides wreckage so effectively, leaving the only known shelter became the only logical path to stay alive. As Antonio walked deeper into the jungle, his body ran out of food and entered a biological process called catabolism. To keep moving, his system had to start eating itself. During starvation, the body first burns through primary fat reserves for high-yield energy. Once depleted, it initiates a secondary phase, stripping its own muscle tissue for amino acids, sacrificing physical strength just to keep the brain and heart pumping. To slow this decay, Antonio scavenged whatever he could find. He ate small bird eggs, watched monkeys for safe wild fruits, carefully stepping around venomous snakes and apex predators like jaguars. By day 31, the physical pain was nearly paralyzing. To force himself forward, he stopped thinking about the total distance and began mentally anchoring to his immediate environment, focusing only on reaching the next tree, and then the next. When the body is consuming its own tissue for fuel and the internal systems are failing, the command to take one more step comes from a place that physical strength can no longer reach. On his 36th day in the jungle, the endless hum of insects and birds was interrupted. He heard the sharp, rhythmic crack of a machete hitting wood. He dragged himself toward the noise and stumbled into a small clearing. After weeks of isolation, this emaciated, dehydrated pilot was suddenly standing in front of a working human camp. He had found a group of local gatherers. They were operating deep within the Amazon, harvesting raw materials like Brazil nuts to bring back to their remote village. They used their radio to contact the authorities and called in search and rescue. Extracting Antonio required a specialized helicopter maneuver to pull him up through the dense canopy, followed by weeks of medical treatment to reverse his extreme weight loss. Antonio eventually recovered. He went on to document every grueling detail of his 36-day trek in a published memoir, and he proved his resilience by returning to the skies soon after. Technology and standard protocols failed on day 1. He made it out because of a refusal to stop moving. Let me know down in the comments what survival item you think is the most crucial, and I'll see you in the next video.